Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. With me in the studio, as always, is the man himself, Mr. Eric J. Morin.
Glad to be here. You know, we took a little bit of a break, but I believe scarcity drives demand. So anyhow, here we are, and back at the Dental Wealth Podcast. Glad to be back.
And we had this one circled on the counter because we actually have a special guest in the studio with us, the world-renowned, the DJ himself, the co-founder of Dental Pitch Brokerage, a personal friend of ours, a motivational speaker. I think the list goes on and on and on. Mr. Elijah Desmond.
Thank you for having me. Super happy to be here.
Glad to have you here. You know, it's funny that you actually did great, Matthew. I was actually thinking through like all the accolades I could say for Elijah. And I was like, man, he's like, and I was like, if you don't know who Elijah is, you're probably been under a rock. You need to come out of the rock and see what's happening in the marketplace. Because, you know, we have, you know, we're friends. We've been around you for so many years, and the creator of the Dental Festival and Smile to See, and you've been in the clinical part of dentistry, and you've created so many amazing organizations. You've touched so many people. And it's just such a pleasure to have you, because I believe that I walked in a room with you actually one day, and it was like the head of Heartland. It was like the head of Dykema, like all these people. Like you are the eyes and ears of so much that's going on in dental right now. And you have such a great attitude, and you've got such great energy. So we're so glad to have you on this podcast and to have this conversation. And I want everyone to just, whatever you're doing, you know, just really tune into this episode, because we're going to talk about some great things that are happening in the industry, and you really don't want to miss this episode. We're going to be really good. So glad to have you, Elijah.
Hey, thank you. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for the intro. It's crazy because you mentioned those big name people. The crazy thing is that I actually focus on the total opposite, the names that are not big. And I did that for now over a decade, and many of them, they grew up to be. Then all of a sudden, the big guys, now they'll talk to me, right? But it's cool because I push myself down. I keep pushing myself down to help people. And regardless if they get to the top one day or not, it feels like it's the right thing to do.
Oh, what a beautiful statement to start it off. And I do think that you have had such an impact on so many people in this industry. And I love Dental Pitch, and we're going to get into Dental Pitch and the market and all this other stuff. But I have to say, when I first heard the concept of Dental Pitch Brokerage, I was like, this is brilliant, which is, you know, instead of dealing with one buyer, it's like, what if we just got like 30 buyers together, and then we made it kind of a bidding war? And I thought, well, gosh, if you were going to sell your dental practice, then I would want to be with somebody who was actually putting me in front of a lot of people. And so I'm going to jump right into Dental Pitch. We're going to talk about the marketplace. We'll kind of throw the conversation around, but I would love for you to just tell people a little bit about Dental Pitch, what it is, how it came about, and kind of, you know, what's happening right now with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, Dental Pitch specifically is a sell-side brokerage firm. And what that means is that we represent the person that's selling the dental practice. And in our network, currently, we have just over 65 buyers that are high-level buyers. What does a high-level buyer mean? That means it's a sophisticated buyer. They have the money to pay now. They will not take a bad deal. They do due diligence to get a fair deal. I think everybody in the world who's buying something, I don't care if it's a water, a candy bar, a new Lamborghini, everybody wants like a good deal. And we're in the business of doing fair deals. Super important to understand. We're bringing buyers and sellers together, but we represent the seller. Also, to be clear, in this industry, it is normal for the buyers to offer a percentage of the sale, okay? And it's perfectly legal. However, it's a gray area, and it's an area we don't touch. So we will never take any money from the buyer on the buy side. We'll only take from the sell side, because that's who we represent. And we're not out to take the buyer through the ringer. We're out to get the fair market value for the practice and the best terms for the practices that we're selling. So just so everybody understands what a broker, some people don't even know what a broker is. I remember my uncle was a dentist. He still is a dentist, but he went to sell his practice. He tried to sell his practice for about 2 years. And I remember him telling me, I'm trying to sell my practice. I talked to, some of my reps, my local reps, and I've tried to take some dentists to lunch. And I'm like, man, if I only existed then, because I could expose you to 65 strong buyers. That's not counting the private practice dentists that we have as well, but 65 strong buyers. Anyhow, what makes us different and unique is we have these events. Now, you do not have to do an event. We could do the traditional route, but we have these events. At the events, we actually put 10 of our 65 plus buyers in the room at a table, and you get interviewed by myself or my business partner from the stage. The buyers listen, and then they ask you questions about your practice that are non-financial. So what happens is if the ones that are interested in you after the meeting, you will have one-on-one meetings. We just got back from Dykema. All of our sellers had between 4 and 7 interested buyers that were meeting with them on the spot. So what we do is we take the timeline and we shrink it down because we pull down the gate. We're not the gatekeeper. We don't have a broker wall up the whole time. You actually get to meet people at the beginning of your journey, not the end.
And that's why I thought this was so great. I've actually gotten the pleasure to be in one of these rooms. It was kind of cool because it's kind of like a Shark Tank feel. And so like the buyers are the sharks and they get to listen to you, but it's really actually a fun conversation. I bring that up now. Some of you listening to dental podcasts is like, has Eric now started saying everyone should sell a dental practice? And I want everyone to hear me and have this conversation, because what we need to know is the marketplace has shifted. If you are in a place, I always say, if you're going to sell your dental practice, get the biggest check possible. And I know you and I have worked together on that, because I think what ends up happening is people get caught in an emotion, but there's also this other side to it, which is making sure if you are going to sell it, you sell it right and you get the highest value, because this is your life's work. And this is something where you want to make sure that if you're going to sell at some point, you're represented by, first of all, you want the biggest pool possible. But you don't want just 1 or 2 buyers. For instance, if you were selling your house, you wouldn't want one offer. You'd really want as many people sitting at your doorstep as possible, which is really what Elijah has created. But the other part of that is that when we're going to go do this, it's like, how far out now we have worked with some of your clients and we've sent some people over to you that were at a position to sell. And so everyone knows that, it's like, hey, look, this is a person who wants to, now might be in one situation who says, hey, I need a few years to get this where I need to be, or it might be someone who's just ready now. So I would ask you this is like, when you're on your side, what you're seeing is with this, because you have a lot of buyers coming to you right now, what are you seeing as far as people being prepared or not prepared for that transaction?
Yep. So on average, we're getting about 50 inbound referrals every month. The cool part is we're not doing marketing. We're just using relationships. And I believe if you take care of people, your people will take care of you. So we're getting about 50 average per month inbound. And I will tell you that majority of them, when I say majority, I mean a strong 75%, they are not ready to sell. And it's just,
everyone just stop there for a second, because I think that's a huge point. Like, if you're listening, like, pull over if you're in the car so you don't, no, I'm just seriously, 75% are not ready. It's interesting because when I started working with part of Dental Pitch, I said, hey, listen, a lot of these guys' financials are going to be a darn mess. Yes. And it's like, oh my gosh, they are. And it's, so I want you to hear what Elijah just said, that 75% of people that are coming right now to say, I'm raising my hand and I think I'm about the end of my career, I want to find out what my practice is worth, are not ready. That's a powerful message. I just didn't want to miss that, Elijah.
Absolutely. And there's also something I think it's really important. You said their financials are going to be a mess. I think that that's something that's amazing about Tower in general, Tower Financial specifically, but like, you guys are numbers driven, super granular. And when people are ready to sell their dental practice, when they think they're ready and they're not, I specifically tell them, you need to focus on one thing: grow your EBITDA.
Your EBITDA, yeah.
Grow your EBITDA. And so really, look, you guys are full service practice management, but to actually have a finance, I would call it a front end before behind a back end, because we send majority of our clients to you guys specifically to get a quality of earnings light. And that's the most granular that you can get. So to start with that is huge. I think that sets you guys apart majorly from the entire industry. And so, but yeah, 75% is a large number. And I said it's a strong 75, meaning it could be more that are that are not ready. It could be more than 75. Mm-hmm. And I'll also be very clear about this. When a practice comes to us, and let's just say, they're ready to sell, right? They have good, high collections, but their margins are only like 8, 10, 13%. We're not going to advise them to sell. We're going to advise them just take a year, maybe two, grow your EBITDA, make it make sense, and stop focus on growing your collections because your collections are already there. Fix your EBITDA. You have an EBITDA problem.
All right, everybody. We should have done this podcast 2 years ago. You know, it's so funny because so what Elijah's saying is stop buying a bunch of locations with low margin. Okay. You just keep adding locations so you can go to an event and say, look, I've got 5 locations, but your profit margin's 8%. And so now you're saying, hey, I want someone to give me this gigantic check. And here you have the person who's literally in tune with the marketplace, not just one buyer, but all the buyers. I would argue pretty much most of the significant buyers in the marketplace is telling you most of you aren't ready. You haven't gotten your financials where you need to. And recently I told someone, I said they were going to buy a practice. I said, go get a like quality earnings. 3 weeks later, the seller said, I give up because they didn't even have financials. So it's really important for people to understand that because even if you're not going to sell right now, you say, I love my practice and I'm growing and my cash flow is great and it's cash flow, my lifestyle and all those types of things. You still want to know where you're at. You should always know what your valuation is today and things that you can prove it. I always say there's 3 reasons to go practice: income, revenue, which is more about scalability, and valuation. You have to know what it's worth at any given point. And so many people, I would think you would agree, Elijah, just don't even have an idea what it's worth or what the things they need to do to move that. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, it's a very correct statement. And they also think that it's worth many times more than it is.
You don't say.
Really?
Elaborate on that.
Yeah. So, they have the state of the art, they have a great team. They know they have the best patients ever, and they think that it's worth more than it is. So at the end of the day, here's the thing. When we go into, I'm saying we go to war for the sellers. Okay. When we go to the war table, it's pretty straightforward. It is a multiple of EBITDA, period. It's a multiple of EBITDA. So we go armed, very armed, which is different than many brokerage firms, right? They're just doing evaluation of their own internal evaluation. We are sourcing out externally to get a quality of earnings, right? And you guys, we send it out to the most. But the thing is, when we get that quality of earnings, we understand what is their adjusted EBITDA, okay? And then when we go to the war table, to go to war for our sellers, we're talking about a multiple of EBITDA, period. And what's more important are the terms. The terms are more important actually than the number for majority of dentists. And I'll tell you, I'll go back to having low margins. Some people have these terrible margins. Here's the only time that I've seen that work. Okay. It's whenever a group has a platform. So their margins are low. Say they're at 8%, 5%. Their margins are low. However, they're investing all this money into a platform. And for those that are listening and don't know what a platform is, ultimately a platform is where you have people like your regional manager, like a CEO, revenue cycle management, right? You have, besides billing collection, you may have HR, right? All of the phone services, all the things that you would need to run all, I'll call it, 5 or 35 or more locations. So what happens is that all of that is called a platform. And let's just say you have a low margin, 5 to 8%. So that means that anybody looking at your book of business is going to say, I do not want to buy that because the EBITDA is so low. Well, if you actually sold your group, your platform, your group to another group who already has all that, so you don't need it, that would be considered an add back. And in that situation, now all of a sudden the EBITDA jumps extremely. I mean, I've seen EBITDA go from, let's just call it $250,000 of EBITDA for 15, 20 locations. And then guess what? When you throw in the corporate overhead or the platform, now all of a sudden you're like, say maybe it's 2.5 million in EBITDA. So the only time that works from my experience is when there's a platform or there's corporate headquarters, then they wash that out and add it back.
And I hope everybody understood that. And I think that makes sense because I think you explained it well. is that we don't need to duplicate services. So I can pull that out of a P&L and say, look, you've got a regional manager, we've got a regional manager. We're not gonna have two regional managers if I buy this thing, so I'm gonna get rid of that regional manager. So we don't, if I already have a call center, I don't need your call center. So those are the types of things we can actually add back and you get credit for and say, look, okay, we're gonna get rid of your call center. We don't need two of them. And so we can ultimately adjust because we're gonna adjust EBITDA. And this is another thing when you say, we've been talking adjusted EBITDA for years and people, it's like one time I had an oral surgeon who was like, look at my profitability, my EBITDA. And I was like, that's because you pay yourself 150 in base pay, but you would have to pay a surgeon $1 million to do what you do. So it's not, the EBITDA is not what you think it is. You just, it's just that you're overstating profitability. I think that conversation is important for people to understand. It's interesting. We told someone the other day about, running all this personal stuff through, and yeah, we could try to decipher it and stuff. But what we're trying to do is say, when we're looking at your EBITDA, we want to have a clean EBITDA. We want to figure out things to take out, the things to add back. We want to know what those are. We want to normalize doctor contribution, which is how much would we have to pay an associate to do what you do, those types of things. And you want to have a baseline. And so some of you are listening to podcasts and you're saying, because I will tell people on pros and negatives of whether you should sell now, keep it, those types of things. And that's where I'm objective on that conversation. When I say to people like, hey, look, you got to think about this. If you're going to think about selling anytime soon, or even if you're not, actually, maybe I'll change that. Even if you're not trying to sell anytime soon, you should still know what the valuation is. You should still have a baseline. You should still say, hey, look, today my stock is worth this much. And then you say, well, okay, because life happens, things happen, you might change, who knows? You got to know what it's worth and what to focus on because you get what you measure. And I saw you smile, so Elijah, so jump in on that one.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Probably my number one thing to say. People come up and say, what are 3 things that you can tell me to help grow my practice? Or what should I do? Or I'm not ready to sell right now. Regardless, go and get your quality of earnings light and talk to an expert like myself or like you guys. I can tell you the multiples for many practices and for all practices, right? I can tell you what the multiples are at. But you need to know your real adjusted EBITDA, and you also need to know the data behind that EBITDA. It's so important because you need to know what to work on. Also, something that I've seen that is happening on a more than once basis. They get their quality of earnings, they get their adjusted EBITDA. We know what the multiples will bring. We go to the very end, and they already know what their number was going to be. They didn't talk to a wealth advisor. They didn't know if they would actually be able to sell. They didn't ask the important questions, right? If you invest this, right, and say it's not in the practice, say you invest it outside the practice in other investments, is that going to be enough for you to retire? It is a huge question. If the answer is no, okay, well, grow your EBITDA to where you'll have the right amount of money in, and also know how many years you're willing to stay in and the pay you're willing to accept. You should have a plan. You shouldn't just wake up one day and say, I want to sell. Here's another thing. Some of these dentists, they have a lot. Their practice is huge. And their EBIT is also really, really big. And sometimes it depends on them a little bit too much. Now, in this instance, say they're not done yet. Say they're like, you know what? I probably still have another 5 to 10 years to go. No problem. How about you sell part of your practice, say 60%, take some chips off the table, and then grow with somebody for the remaining. So you already have your life saved. You take chips off the table, and now you can grow the rest with somebody else, but waiting until the very end to sell, which is when I say the end, I'm talking about you have 1 year left. Well, first off, it's going to take you 6 months to sell. We sell it in 3 months? Sure. It's going to take you 6 months. There's not going to be a strong buyer that's going to buy you with 6 months left. So you really need to sell 5 years out. On the low end, say 4 years out. 4 years out takes 6 months to get you sold. Maybe takes you a year, the worst case scenario, if a couple of deals go bad. Okay, now you have 3 years left, and that's acceptable. 3 to 5 years is how long that most groups want you to stay on prior to doing your own thing. And by the way, you don't get kicked off after 5 years. You could stay on 15 years, and they would love it, but your minimum is that.
And what would you say,
so
you said 75% of the people that come to you aren't ready for sale. What would you say is the biggest determining factor for that? Is it just their personal goals don't align with what they would sell for? Or is it just like they're not getting a multiple? Like can you talk more about like what disqualifies them basically from being able to sell?
Collections is too small. one. Therefore, their EBITDA is too small. So they kind of go hand in hand if they're being very smart with their numbers. So they're too small to sell. That's the first thing. And they're not in a competitive environment. And since they're not in a competitive environment, they can look at selling to a local dentist and getting maybe a 3 times multiple, 4 at the max. But where we want to be where they're getting, let's just say, smaller practice. Let's say a small practice, say 500,000 in EBITDA. Well, 500,000 in EBITDA will bring more like a 5 or a 6 times multiple. But we would like it for them to be 1 to 3 million, 3 to 5, even bigger, because then the higher your EBITDA, typically higher the multiple. Here's another thing. There's a practice, and that practice is they are in a situation where they have pretty good EBITDA, right? We'll call it a 25%. So it's good, but they only have 4 operatories. There's no room for growth. So so the buyers are going to be like, great, good job, but it's hard to sell that practice. Now, if they just moved locations, so maybe it takes them a year to move locations and maintain or grow EBITDA. Move locations, and look, you could get 6 and be very attractive, but why not get 8? Why not get 10? Why not? And you know what? You don't have to build the ops full out as long as they're plumbed. If they're plumbed, that is what's needed.
So I want everyone, really, because I love this conversation, I want everyone to kind of really to listen to this clearly. What Elijah's saying, and by the way, he's just said, like, we want you to grow your valuation. Understand that what are the things that, because, and I have Elijah on, and you'll never ever see probably a broker on this podcast ever again. The reason why is because I don't put my name on a lot of people. I'm really weird about that. I don't have a lot of, it's just the way I've always been wired. And so what we're talking about is Elijah has a motivation to make sure you're getting the highest valuation. He actually is incentivized to do that. So what ends up happening is it's scary sometimes because people are like, oh, maybe I'm not ready to sell. I shouldn't talk to a broker. I don't know what's going on. And then what ends up happening is they're talking to their friend who's like, private equity is going to dry up in 1 month, which is not true. It's just crazy. And someone scares the hell out of them. And they're like, I don't know what to do. I'm going to try to get 5 of my friends to all just sell it one time. And you guys got to just stop the noise. Stop the noise for a minute and get calm and stop listening to all your buddies freaking out at the golf club or whatever. And just listen. What you need to do is get great advice. No matter what you're doing in life, and I don't care if it's your golf swing but your business is a whole nother level, you need advice. And so when you sit down with an Elijah, you sit down with his team and say, hey, listen, here I am. It's 2025. I'm thinking about 2030 is when I'd be done. I don't plan on selling anytime soon. Elijah's not going to cold call you in the middle of the night and say, come on, let's go. It's so I want everyone to hear me on this. So what you do is you say, and by the way, you could say 5 years from now, hey, I've decided to hold on to it for 3 more years. That's fine. But what you want to do is you want to look at this and say, okay, where am I at today? What does my valuation look like today? What am I doing well? And maybe it's really good. And maybe what do I need to stop doing or do more of, and figure that out. So you have a game plan. And that's why we work with some of the dental pitch clients. We work together because it's like, okay, we've got the next 5 years to figure this out. It's going to take a year of that. So let's just extend the 6 months to a year. So let's just say it takes a year for you to get the right deal and all the things you want. You've consulted your advisor. You know how much money you need to get in retirement. That was a great point by Elijah. You got to make sure that's happening. So that means we get 4 years. Well, it's probably going to take you a year to really start to make headway on all these initiatives you got to make. Because when you start making changes in an organization, you might lose some team members. You might add some more team members. So then you're talking about a 3-year gap. So then what ends up happening is like the time starts squeezing, and you realize that if you want to sell in 5 years, you got to get going today, even though it's 5 years.
Yeah, and I actually should start. That's like a light bulb for me. I got one behind me popped up, right? Here's the crazy thing. I've always said 3 to 5 years. I think I'm going to stop saying that just after this conversation. And here's the reason why. It's really not 3 to 5 years. If you want to get the max dollars and have a bidding war, that means with all the buyers, what is ideal to make that happen? You may have to change your real estate that you're in, right? You may need to build out. You may need to focus on your EBITDA. You're going to need a company to grow your EBITDA. Okay, so by the time you do all of that jazz, say, right? So you hear me, 5 to 7 years. and I should say 6 or 7 years before you want to sell, but I'm going to say 5 to 7 just to not freak everybody out, because you know what? Some groups will be okay with you staying on for 3. Some majority, and when I say majority, I'm saying 60% or more, they would like you to stay on for 5 years. Can we negotiate? Potentially. 3 to 5 years, yes, but you're going to take less money if it's 3 years. So I really should begin to say 6 to 7 years before you want to sell. We need to talk then. And I'm all about the long game. I'm okay. And I don't need anybody's business. That's a really cool part. Like, and I say that in the most respectful way. I don't need business. I'm in the business of relationships. My currency is relationships. It is not dollars. And so I don't care. I'm in it for you. I want to go 7 years, but here's what I'll do. You want to go 7 years? Perfect. Go get your quality of earnings light done. See how much your business is worth. If you have multiple locations, sign up for a company like Pronto that gives you 180 data metrics, right? See exactly where you're at. Then have somebody go and fix the issues. Get everything, the low-hanging fruit. And I'm not saying go and acquire more locations. I'm not even saying necessarily grow the collections and your practice. Focus on your EBITDA first. So where are your margins at? So that's going to take you a year. If you're doing a build out and having to switch leases, jump over to somewhere else, that might take you longer. Could take you 2 years. Then they should be working with you for 12 to 24 months, right? I think in an ideal world, it's 12 months. We send somebody, but you know what? If it takes 2 years, they needed that. And so now all of a sudden you're talking about build out, changing your operatory, finding somebody to work with like you guys. And then, okay, now we go out and find a seller. So now we push we get you ready, you're sell ready. You have a SIM created, right? A confidential information memorandum. That's like a PowerPoint that's beautiful about your practice, all the data points that the buyers like to see. It's like a beautiful ribeye or filet with, top shelf sides, right? It really is. And so we send this out to all the buyers. Now all of a sudden, we have I'm going to call it a 3 to 6 month process that could take longer if deals go to the end and then they fail. Then we got to start all over. So you are talking about at that point, now maybe if you started 7 years ago, now maybe you have 5 years left. So I really should stop saying 3 to 5. This is a reality check for me, like an eye opener. I need to start saying 6 to 7 years and stop saying 3 to 5 years.
And like, God, this is a great podcast. I mean, this is so good for people to hear, because I think what people do is they wait till the last minute. They might wait till they're in decline, which is the worst thing you could possibly do. And they're not in preparation mode. We don't know what the future holds for anybody, but here's what we know, that if you're, and that's what Elijah, and I want to kind of reiterate what you're saying, because it's so good that, hey, because this is from experience. And the cool thing, you also said, so I'm just going to hit on, is like Elijah doesn't need to get this deal done today to pay his bill. So be all right. I don't need to get the deal done to pay bills. And that's the people you want working for you. Are like, hey, look, if you don't work with me, it's fine. I'm going to give you some advice though. And this advice is really objective advice. It's saying, hey, look, you've got to be out. So that's fine. We've got 65 buyers lined up. Elijah's got 65 buyers ready to go, but he's ultimately incentivized to take care of you. So what we're saying is, hey, listen, and I love that advice about a building. Hey, you might be moving locations. If you want to get, so go back down to it again. Like if you have $1 million EBITDA, right? And you say, well, okay, well, let's just say that your practice is doing, let's just say you're at 7 million or 6 million or whatever, then, somewhere in there, 5 million, whatever. And when you sell everything off and pay the taxes and whatever today, you might find that your passive income, unless you have other investments, might go down. So we have to make sure we have the right number in retirement to say, hey, how much money do you need to get the retirement you need? Well, okay, to get what you need, Dr. Smith, we actually need to double where you're at today, because that's the number you need. We need to get 14 million or whatever the number is, okay, for a sale price. So for us to do that, you're landlocked here, and this is happening, and this is happening, and we also need to invest in this, and maybe your hours, and maybe it's your RCM, and so there's this is where Tower and us work so well together, and Dental Pitch, because it's like, okay, now we've got this time period. Now we have time. Exhale, breathe. And we're like, okay, here's our plan. Over the next 7 years, we're going to add this. We're going to stop doing this. We're going to move this. And then because you're measuring EBITDA, one of the very first videos I did starting the year, I said, stop creating a top line goal necessarily for your business and create a bottom line goal. What's your EBITDA goal for 2025? You should have an EBITDA goal. If you double, but your valuation goes down, that's working. Like it's just working harder. It's not working smarter. And so there's a lot of things people can do. I mean, I saw recently a larger group that had like 40% utilization of their locations, 40% utilization. I'm like that's ego. Like you're scaling out of ego. You're just buying locations, but you're not actually filling them out. And so there's so much work to be done in this if you're wanting to get this. So even if you're not thinking about selling today and you're like I'm hearing this podcast, but I'm not thinking about selling right now, that's okay. You still need this. You need to find out, hey, what is it worth today? What if I went to go save today? And if I wanted to sell it for, and hell, create a big goal. I mean, I would encourage you to like say, hey, look at a reasonable goal. Don't say like, something that's crazy. I'm going to go from 1 to $1 billion in 12 months, but create a reasonable goal. And then what ends up happening is, okay, let's talk about the steps to get there. And then Elijah has a gazillion, so much information to say, hey, we see buyers doing this right now. We see buyers doing that. Instead of listening to your friends at the golf club who are just creating stuff, go talk to Elijah and his team who are saying, hey, we're with 65 plus buyers and we're telling you what buyers are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And my business partner, Matt Ornstein, by the way, he's my mentor, one of my best friends. He started with 20 locations 4 years ago, and he now has 75 locations and a very good EBITDA. And when I say very good, you're talking 20 to 22%. And essentially, I've learned so much from him. Something that he had mentioned just recently, he said there is, you go to sell your house, there's Zillow. Okay, you can look at Zillow and see what the houses in your neighborhood are going for. It's like all public information. Well, we're in a world of dentistry where it's actually private information. So there's no Zillow for dentistry. So who are you going to rely on to tell you like what your practice is actually worth, right? I mean, this is a reason why people, and one of the many reasons they engage in our services, because we can actually say, here's what your practice is worth. But the only way to do that is for us to have the data and them to go get a quality of earnings on their practice so we can actually know what it's worth. Another really cool thing, I know you said about 40% of the space is being utilized. Matt said something, my partner Matt said something on the stage from Main Stage Dykema just less than a week ago, and he left a major gem out. He goes, many of the dentists out there, right, and team members, they're not going to want to work on Friday and Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But to fully utilize a practice, you really should be open weekends and evenings. And oh, by the way, you can reach out to insurances and negotiate a higher rate, higher pay from the insurances because you're open weekends and evenings. And the cool part is that affects the entire office. Once you change the evenings and weekends, it affects the entire office. I've seen everybody with their camera out taking a picture of that slide. I mean, it makes sense.
Well, and here's what people need to know too, is that usually 8 to 5 Monday through Thursday is what it takes to pay your fixed overhead and give you some type of margin. But every hour you add after that fixed expense is paid is about 52% profit margin because it's just variable cost. So you got to think about that procedure, whatever it is literally now it's 52% of profit. And you're saying, well, I want to grow my EBITDA. Well, let me tell you what, go back to Elijah's point. And I sat down with Matt a while back and we were just having this conversation about utilization of space. And I said something to him. I said, people aren't maximizing profit per fixed cost. And I'll remember Matt jumped up and was like, no one's talking about that in this industry. And I'm like, you've got to maximize profit per fixed cost. And so quit. Ego is taking over sometimes in this industry where people want to tell people how many locations they got. People on our side of the business would care less. We're like, great, you have 12 locations that are losing money. Bravo for you. That doesn't really impress us that much. Now, a $12 million EBITDA, that might be more impressive, right? So we're really on the other side. And I think sometimes people don't engage in this conversation. And I want to encourage everybody. So if I go to the dental office, there's a good chance someone's going to tell me that I need to have something filled, something capped, whatever. But I still go to the dental office. I still go. Sometimes people don't engage with a broker because they're like, oh my God, they're going to tell me to sell tomorrow. Okay. And they don't, the same thing happens with towers sometimes. Like, well, oh my gosh, they're going to actually want me to actually grow my practice and utilize services. They're like, yeah, that's kind of, but maybe not. We turn a lot of people away. Matthew will tell you, like, we turn a lot of people away. So what I would say to people is that I love what your team is doing. Like, I wouldn't have you on the podcast if it wasn't. I love your team. I love your, the what you guys are building. The model is not in dental, just so you guys know. What Elijah and his team has created is such a unique thing. It's like it's a disruptor. It's like no one thought about that, and it's such a unique thing. But don't be scared to talk to an Elijah and then talk to a tower, but talk to Elijah and his team and say, hey, I don't want to sell. You can be honest. Like, he's not going to say you need to sell next week. You could say, I don't want to sell for the next 5 years. But let's go to one more example. Let's go back to Elijah's comment again. Okay, you're going to sell in 7 years, but 7 years, what ended up happening was we took your valuation from $4 million to, like, say $20 million. But at $20 million, you weren't ready you just love dentistry and you're not ready to walk away. Okay, so take a $10 million check home or whatever it ends up being, put that in a retirement account, keep working. You still own a large portion of the practice that's continuing to increase in valuation as part of your investment portfolio. Plus, you get to stay in the dental office. Plus, you get to be there every day. And so, depending on, no matter what your goals are, you need advice. You need great advice around you because if not, the mistake, and I actually have a book coming out called The $10 Million Mistake. I'm telling you, and Elijah's backing it up, that the mistakes that people are making in this industry right now are way over $10 million mistakes. They're all over the place. And this podcast is to say, I don't want you guys making a $10 million mistake. And the very first thing to do is, like, I do think it's great to reach out to, like, Elijah and his team and say, hey, where am I at today?
Yeah. And I think I want to make it very clear. I give you a recent story about a friend that we represent in DC. Okay. That friend that we represent in DC, we had a conversation. Margin was lower than expected. And I said, well, how are you going to grow that? Well, I'm just going to get serious. Okay. Well, if you're going to get serious, then it's time to hire the expert to grow that, because you're not focused anymore. He said, man, well, she said, I'm coached out. I'm coached to death. I'm coached out. I did this. There's a huge difference with hiring a coach to grow your collections over hiring your coach to prepare you to sell and growing your EBITDA. Night and day. Number one reason, you are ready to get out. When your feet are against the fire and you're ready to get out, but you're not going to just do a fire sale. But when your feet are against the fire, you act, you follow instructions, you take advice. Growing your EBITDA is different than just growing your practice. Growing your practice and growing your EBITDA, two different things.
I always say cash flow and net income are completely different things. Like, and you might be great at net income, but really stink at cash flow.
Yep.
And so I think, and I've never heard someone say that, Elijah. And I thought that was such a great point. Like, I'm going to capture this part of the podcast because it's so great. It is totally different to grow your EBITDA than grow your top line. In fact, people like us might say, stop growing, stop it, stop trying to grow, and let's go get EBITDA. And your EBITDA can double and you can decline in revenue.
Yes.
and you need to know that. So quit chasing some number. Don't sit down with your team at the beginning of the year. This year, we're going to do this much more in collections. You have to know, hey, how about EBITDA? Because EBITDA turns into cash flow if you're smart about it. And then if you know what to do with cash flow and know how to reinvest that cash flow, this is where we start getting exponential growth. And for someone who says, hey, I want to get out of this in 5-7 years, and even if you're not, and I want to keep hitting that point, even if you're not, you're like, hey, I don't want to sell anytime soon. Why would I talk to a broker? I'm going to do this forever and I'm going to leave it to my kids or whatever it is. Because you need to understand where you're at today. You need to get advice. Would Elijah eventually love to sell your dental practice? Yes, he would absolutely love to sell your dental practice. Would I love to take you on as a consulting client? 100%, right? There's no bones about that. Would you love to do my dental care? Yes, you would probably love to do my dental care, but that doesn't mean we can't have objective conversations. I might sit down with you in your dental chair and you say, Eric, this is your treatment plan. Whether I take advantage of it or not is really up to me, but I need to understand where my oral health is. We're saying is you need to understand where your business health is, where you are today, get a baseline, get a treatment plan, know what that looks like, and then you can decide whether you want to implement it all now or not. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the overarching theme is be sell ready, be exit ready. I've personally exited 7 times my personal businesses. And I can tell you that the majority of the time, I was not sell ready. I wasn't sell ready. Now, granted, I hadn't been in the space of M&A. I haven't been in the brokerage space, prior to a couple of years ago, right? I used to be a consultant. I used to be a this. I used to be a that. I'm a businessman. I'm an entrepreneur. But the craziest thing is that I simply didn't know. I should always be sell ready. And so now I move differently. I act differently. I do different things in the business because I know I need to be sell ready. And so I think, when it comes down to like the people listening to this podcast is like, if you want to be sell ready, then you simply need to have a conversation with my team or Eric's team to get you sell ready. And conversations are free. Conversations are free. Like doesn't hurt. So take the conversation so you can be exit ready or sell ready.
I love this podcast. I will say this one thing on that note is that I was looking at an investment the other day and I said to my bank, they said, yeah, because I'm going to leverage some capital. And they said, well, we know you, Eric, we know you'll send everything over in 5 minutes. Right. I'm literally like, and I mean it to everyone, I can send my stuff over in 5 minutes. Like no problem. If it takes you 3-4 weeks, if you have to say, let me get with my accountant and wait 3 weeks to get stuff done, I'm telling you, you're not even close. You're so far from where you should be. But this is an amazing podcast. We could go on for the next 2 hours. We could talk about changes in the industry. We could talk about all kinds of things. I mean, there's so many places we could go. I want to thank you for your time, Elijah. And I want people to understand. So now I'm listening to this. I'm a doctor. I'm like, okay, man, I'm pumped up because I think I'm pumped up. So it's a great podcast. I want to talk to Dental Pitch. I want to learn more about Dental Pitch. Like Elijah said, conversations are free. He's not going to try to cold close me. We want to have a conversation. And I just want to know where I'm at today. What's the best way for someone to just say, hey, I want to reach out to Dental Pitch and I just want to find out. Those are good guys. They got a big pool of buyers and I'm 7 years out or I'm whatever it is. I love to find out what they do and just have a conversation. What do they do?
Absolutely. Well, first off, they can go to our website at dentalpitchbrokerage.com. And while on that website, I think it makes sense to download the book on EBITDA or Matt's book on growing practices, of which Eric, you're in the book as well. And read and educate yourself. Education is the most powerful thing. You go and get CE all the time. You grow your clinical skills. Well, now it's time to start thinking about the business side. Go grab those books on the website, and then they could actually go on the website and also call us, or they can reach out and say they would like to have a call with us if they don't call us direct. Lastly, my personal information is Elijah@dentalpitchbrokerage.com, and I'd love you to just come and write 10 questions down, and I'm happy to answer them for free to help you. And I don't care if I get your business right. Do I want it? Sure. Long game. That's the game that we're playing here because we want to educate the industry on what they need.
And if you're a Tower client, because we have some clients that love to listen to the podcast as well. Look, I will facilitate a phone call where all three of us get on a phone call and we'll just kind of talk through the conversation and we'll make sure you're ready. And we talk a lot about valuation at Tower, but also get Elijah's insights. So I love it. Thank you for being here, Elijah. This has been awesome. Yes. We could talk forever and we do. Sometimes we just talk on the phone and we get to talk forever. But you're literally, I think, one of the most coveted people in this industry. I love what you do. And actually from the bottom of my heart, thank you for what you do to this industry, how you've affected this industry. And thank you for taking the time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric.